Back when I started to drive electric cars, I went through a bevy of different vehicles. There was the weird bubble car, there was the converted plug-in Prius, and then there was the Golf E City Stromer, a 1985 Volkswagen electric Golf, made by Volkswagen as an electric car back in 1985. And I happen to own one of 2 right-hand drive cars ever built. Sadly, it broke and it ended up being sold back to Volkswagen to be part of its heritage collection, and it's currently undergoing a restoration. But today, I get to drive its great-grandchild, the Volkswagen e-Golf. My name is Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield.
I'm Mark Chatterley.
And we're really cold.
Yeah, and I guess you're driving this one.
Yay.
Oh.
Let's talk base spec trim, because there is only one trim level on this car, and that is quite highly spec'd. It's essentially equivalent to the Nissan Leaf top spec.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have the all-round view monitor or whatever that you can get on the top-end Leaf, but
things
it's that
you
same
lose
kind of,
in one area, you probably gain in another.
If I press this button, this mode button, this changes the way that the car operates.
Quite substantially as well.
Quite substantially. I've got these figures down here as well. Let's talk about this. In normal mode, this car does 0 to 60 in 10 seconds.
Yeah, 10.2.
10.2, something like that. Yeah. Top speed of 87 miles per hour.
Which is another one of my minor bugbears.
Okay, that's fine. But the legal limit in the UK is 70.
It is, yes. So it can't be that much of a bugbear.
In expressing your bugbear about that, Mark, you're basically going, high speed! So in Eco Power, which is the mode that I think we are now, no, we're just about to go into Eco Power, Eco mode, it restricts your power to just 70 kilowatts on the motor.
Yes.
There is a kickdown, which we'll come to in a minute.
Yeah.
85 kilowatts is the power of the motor in full blast.
Yeah.
In eco mode, it's restricted to 70 kilowatts. 0 to 60 then takes 13 seconds, and your top speed is limited to 72 miles an hour.
So again, you can still hit the legal limit in the UK.
You can still hit the legal limit in the UK, and it changes the way that your heating operates.
Yes.
It gives you less heating power.
Yeah, less heating power, less air conditioning power.
And then in Eco Plus, it turns off the heating and the air conditioning altogether, I think. It gives you warm bums. You can still have warm bums.
Because that doesn't use very much power at all.
There's no heated seats in the back. It limits your power to 55 kilowatts.
Yeah, which changes the 0 to 60 over 20 seconds?
Something like that. It's not nice. And then your top speed is limited to 56 miles per hour.
Yes. So that is you use it around the town or at the end of your journey. Mm-hmm. But as you said, there's the kickdown function. So at any point in any of those restricted modes, you get to the bottom of your accelerator and there's a nice little jolt, and then you've got full power of the car again. Yeah. Which is lovely. And it's actually a very physical jolt. If you've ever driven the Leaf, and I think the Zoe had the kickdown as well, it felt a bit spongy. Mm-hmm. In this car, it's very much, it's like pressing a button with your foot.
We're talking about range, okay? This is 83 miles EPA.
Yeah.
116 mpge.
Yes.
The Leaf is 84 miles EPA, but 114 mpge. So they really do sit
pretty much side by side.
Side by side.
Although I would say it's much easier to get 80 odd miles out of this.
Yeah.
I especially with the no regen mode. I know I've gone on about that already, but I feel I could get on my regular driving, that's that not exceeding the motorway speeds, maybe 65, 70 on the motorway and going around town. I could get over 100 miles as long as I could turn off the regen. Yeah, we both. Oh, that was the. Yeah, I'm very close on the left, and it's letting me know with red bars
to tell you that you're going to scratch the lovely Golf at the side of the thing, which you didn't do.
I didn't do.
Okay. So I'm looking at this Park Pilot thing. It's really neat, Mark. It lets you see. I'm having difficulty putting it in gear. It's this Park Pilot shows you where the steering wheel, where the wheels will go if you carry on keeping the steering wheel at that particular point.
So where you're going to swing the car, essentially.
Yeah, it's very useful.
And it's, I think, a little overzealous. When it goes red and beeps at you saying, "Ah, you're about to touch something," you're really not. You got a little bit of extra. Because because I had to. The way I was charging the car, I had to get it quite close to my my house because the charging ports on the left-hand side at the back. I had to reverse it up my driveway, which isn't something I usually do. So actually having that to tell me when I was about to whack things was incredibly useful.
This has actually got dual zone climate control.
Yes.
Which is one of the things I like. So I can turn my AC down to like 16 degrees and have it nice and cool.
And then
you can have it really hot on the other side.
That always seems to me a bit of a marketing gimmick because, I mean, we're sat next to each other. Yeah. That's like smoking and non-smoking in restaurants. This has got a parking assist mode as one of the bells and whistles.
Yes.
It is an optional extra. It doesn't come as standard.
Right, and in the States it comes with a camera as well, which it doesn't have here, and it's just the stupidest, insanest system.
Again, it was on the UK site as an optional extra, the reverse camera.
Okay.
But it's not in this particular car. And I missed that, I have to say. I missed the reversing camera.
The idea is you drive up, there's a button down by your left knee.
There is.
And interestingly, in the left-hand drive cars,
it's in the same place.
The buttons are in the same place, so it's on the right-hand side, which means your mode button is right by the steering wheel. That makes sense. Anyway, so the parking button, you press it once, and it activates a system that scans the parking spaces
as you drive
past. And when it finds one that it knows you're going to fit in, it
tells you to
a stop and a thumbs up.
Yeah.
And it will reverse into the parking space for you.
You have to control the acceleration and braking.
Right. So
and the gear you're in.
And it's like the Prius a couple of years ago as well.
Yeah. Exactly. And it does all the steering. You have to take your hands off the steering wheel and it does the steering. And if it needs you to go forward for that final adjustment, it will tell you. And it can also do parallel parking and perpendicular parking. Mm-hmm. So you can go past perpendicular spaces and it should be able to do them as well.
Sounds like a Golf, doesn't it?
It does. It's just so simple. It's the what should we have as a startup sound? Just two beeps. Two beeps will do it. Be fine.
I'm talking about the door actually.
And the door. Okay.
It sounds like a Golf. The minute you get in it, it's just got that lovely golfy feel.
Isolated from the outside.
It is. It just makes you feel warm and snuggly.
People on my street didn't realise this was an electric car.
They thought you'd gone to the dark side.
Yeah, well, there was one chap who saw it and didn't give it a second look, and I pointed out when that's the electric Golf. At which point he got out of his car, he abandoned his car in the middle of my street, which you can do because I live in a village, and walked across and wanted to see inside the bonnet and the boot and see what it was about because he just didn't believe it was fully electric.
So I just saw you playing with the gear lever. When we did the quick charge, you were really, really excited about this regen braking.
I am, and I think it's not so much that there are different values to it. The bit that I get really excited about is having the no regen, the option for none, which is what I love. I went to Cheltenham and back the other day, which in my Leaf would be a journey that takes about 3/4 of the battery pack. My Leaf's getting a bit old, so that's probably why. But in this car, it was just over a quarter it had used.
Crikey.
Because I knew the roads. I was able to, I'm going down a hill now. I've turned off regen. There's no need for me to be putting power into the car and no need for me to be taking it out and slowing down. And it's just such a nice thing to have. And actually it's better because Tesla, you always hold Tesla up as the ideal, I guess.
I don't.
I know, but a lot of people do. And they don't even have this level of changeability. If you want to change the regen on a Tesla, it's 3 menus in on the touchscreen.
Yeah.
With this and the other cars we've seen that do it as well, it's just a little tap.
I do miss having the paddle shifters. I know I've harped on about this before with you. I really like the idea of the paddle shifting because you keep your control, you keep your hand on the steering wheel at all times. And I just like that feeling of just keeping the car grounded and in its place. One of the pluses this has over the Leaf is the seats are a bit more comfortable.
Again, I'm not sure I agree with you there. I think, because we've said this in quite a few cars, as whether we've completely disagreed on whether the seats are comfortable or not.
I quite like them, but they're nice and warm. They've got more leg support, I think, in the Golf than the Leaf.
They feel, maybe this is me admitting to having a fat ass, but they feel too narrow for me. They kind of come up at the sides too quickly.
Okay.
And so I feel like I'm being squashed together. I'm not saying that they're bad. It's just maybe if I had complete control over building my own car, they're not the ones I would choose.
Yeah. But I mean, this I mean, this is cloth trim, and I think you can get it with leather as well.
You can get it with leather.
I just like the side support. It's got more side support than the Leaf has.
And again, me saying that it comes up at the side of the bum and at your side, it does feel a bit more sporty because of that.
Yes.
You're like you're being not a bucket seat because that's a complete extreme, but it's got that kind of feeling of the seat enveloping you. Steering feel,
response. I really like the steering feel.
Yeah.
It's heavier than the Leaf.
It is.
It's much more tangible. It feels much more... it feels like you can grab hold of it. It's got that nice, firm golf feeling to it, as opposed to the little Japanese steer it with your finger.
Yeah, and if you go back to the quick charge, I said I didn't really like cars with heavier steering. This has grown on me a little bit.
You can feel corners better.
Yeah, taking it up those hills and going around the corners. I enjoy doing that in the Leaf. There was something about this car in the way you could feel the corners.
Mm-hmm.
But saying that, I went the same route when we had the newer Leaf, the 1.5, whatever you want to call it, which has the heavier steering, and I didn't quite have that same feeling. So there's something else about this car.
Is mechanically connected as well as this car is. I think it might all be electronic in the Leaf, and this feels like there is still a great degree of mechanical connection to the road. And the seating is lower down. It feels slightly lower. It hugs the ground nicely. All of the controls on this are lovely, and you can think little nice touches like you can set it so that when you just tap the indicator, it keeps it on for a set amount of time.
Yeah.
So you don't have to lock it into position. It's great if you're overtaking. All of the buttons and controls are within easy reach. And the nice thing I like about this is that the steering wheel itself, the centre of the steering wheel is not massive.
Yes.
The airbag is very compact and very small, and that gives you really unobstructed access to the steering, to beyond the steering wheel, to the dashboard.
Yeah.
The gauges and the dials are nice and big and clear. It's a mixture of digital meets analog.
Yeah, I quite like that combination. I did have a bit of issue with the placing of certain things. So we were talking about the mode button. It's hidden behind the shifter.
But only in right-hand drive countries.
So in
left-hand drive countries, it's in the right place.
Which means the parking alert system and the parking would be getting hidden.
That makes sense, because I don't use parking all the time, and I'd like to be able to use mode
more often, yeah. But there is another way of changing the mode from the touchscreen.
There is a system that allows you to connect with your car, telematics system, just like pretty much every other plug-in car that's being sold seriously.
Yeah.
This is very, very configurable, the touchscreen display. The setup's very easy. The voice pairing, the Bluetooth pairing, very nice.
Yeah.
It's got Bluetooth media streaming as well as...
including full image, so it takes the album image, which not all the cars do. So
auxiliary input and USB hidden behind this lovely little coin tray down the bottom there. It's also got DAB in Europe.
Yes.
Digital audio broadcasting. But it's got obviously Sirius FM satellite radio in the States, because they don't have satellite. They don't have DAB. It's their equivalent. So I've got this adaptive cruise control activated.
Excellent.
Which is great. It's got sensors in the front of the car, and it's the precursor to autonomous driving.
Yeah.
It ensures that you set the distance, so you can have it a short, medium, or long distance between you and the car in front.
It takes a little bit of getting used to.
It does. It's very nice though, and I've used it in a city environment where I've slowed right down with the traffic.
Yeah.
It's not perfect though. There's been moments where I've been driving along with it activated, and the person in front has stopped and the car's stopped. But then there's been situations where I've been following behind quite a long way, and the car in front is stationary.
Yeah.
And I'm still barreling along at sort of 40, 50 miles an hour, and the car goes, "Oh, there's somebody there." And I've never actually got to that point where it hammers on the brakes, but I can imagine it being quite a horrible experience. I braked long before the car decided it needed to.
I was going through one of the other villages around me, and I was going, it was a 40 mile an hour zone. We were going less than that because we were coming up to traffic lights. Mm-hmm. So I thought I'd let it see if it will stop, foot hovering over the brake. And it did brake the car more severely and later in the day than I would have. I would have done it more gently further on.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a hangover from my sort of eco driving, because you tend to feather the the brake to get regen.
Yeah.
So it could be a hang up from that, but I wonder if it's just a matter of getting used to the technology.
Okay, so I just pulled behind this van that's going slower,
Yeah.
just to demonstrate the automatic cruise control. I was doing 70, I dropped behind him, he's just under 70, and the car's automatically slowed down.
There's a really weird thing. I don't know if it's a bug or not, but whenever I get into the car, I have to keep switching the heating off.
Oh, that's interesting.
It doesn't remember that because it always comes on at 22 degrees as well, which for me
Yes.
is like,
Okay, it did that to me too.
yeah.
I just thought it was, okay.
But when we switched on now to do the review, having only just got out of it 5 minutes before, it remembered that I wanted it off. So I don't know whether there's some piece of sort of
Maybe
semi-volatile memory that's meant to be remembering and is running out of power and forgetting. But it really annoys me that I have to switch off the heating every time I'm getting into this car.
Oh.
So my other bugbear is I find the inside of this car it's nice, but it's a little lacking on personality. Does that make any sense?
It feels like a Golf.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd hate to say it, Mark, but that's a Golf.
That's the Golf now.
Golf is functional.
Yeah.
It's always been functional.
I suppose maybe I'm just reminiscing about the older Golfs, which are now.
My day.
Well, no, but they kind of look classic now, don't they? And I suppose that's not a style. That's just because they're old. Whereas this is. I mean, we talked about the Renault having quite a plasticky feeling interior.
Yeah.
And this isn't far away.
No, but it doesn't sound hollow.
It doesn't sound hollow.
You can push it and it feels nice.
But it is that textured plastic. And I think if you start thinking about it too long, which I had to do sitting here and think about it, it isn't ugly, it isn't necessarily bad, it's just lacking personality. Yeah. It doesn't say I'm a sporty car. It feels sportier. The way it's got a harder ride than I believe the petrol equivalent. This has got a slightly harder ride. You're lower to the ground than the Leaf and the other cars I've driven, especially the E-Up.
Yep.
So it's got this sporty feel, and then the interior doesn't quite match up. Other than the dash. The dash looks quite nice and sporty with the analogue.
The interior volume of this car is bigger than the Leaf. But the Leaf has a smaller boot.
Okay.
So if you look down on your left-hand side there, you'll see a piece of paper, and it will tell you the capacity in cubic feet.
22.8 cubic feet of space behind the seats, 52.7 cubic feet with seats folded down. Total interior volume is 93.5 cubic feet. Same as the standard Golf, slightly smaller in the rear than the Leaf with seats up, but the Golf trumps the Leaf with the seats down.
Yeah, and you can fold these seats flat, I believe, as well. Now, this has an underboot space. It's what I call a flexible boot, so you can have it in two different levels. Yeah,
with this nice little system that Volkswagen have got, where you just kind of pull and lift it up and it slides down, and the whole floor kind of moves of the boot, which is quite clever.
Yeah. I've had some time with this and my kids.
Yeah.
And one of the things they picked up, which I didn't pick up, is this has got rear vents for the AC. So they've got an ability to have warm air or cold air blowing on them. But the nice thing about this is the transmission tunnel's not all that big, is it? Not really.
No.
Not that it's a transmission tunnel, but it's packed full of other goodies these days.
Which is, how did they find the leg space at the back? Because it looks, I mean, looking over my shoulder, I haven't really spent a huge amount of time in the back of this car. Quite small, but...
I think it's about the same as the Leaf, and certainly, but you're not seating up as high, so they've got a little bit more headroom, and that's one of the things I like about this car. It's got massive amounts of headroom. So we've had this for a week.
Yes.
We've driven this collectively probably about 400 miles between us.
Yeah. I maybe a little bit more than that because I did a fair bit the other day.
The weekend. So you don't want to give this back. I'm just going to broach this subject now.
I really don't. I love it. It's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's perfect, but the jump from my Leaf to this, and that's always how I tend to compare the cars that we're reviewing, is where does it stand versus the Leaf, the 2011 Leaf I own. And the other cars have been interesting, and there are various reasons I may choose them over the Leaf. This is the first car that I've had on review where I've started looking at prices and working out whether I can afford
It's
it.
funny you should say that, because my partner and I have been having that same conversation about this car, which is interesting because part of me goes, this doesn't have chatter mode, doesn't have DC quick charging, it has CCS quick charging, which means, you know, it's a little less reliable.
And a whole new set of charges I'd have to learn as to where they are. And I guess it comes down to, I said earlier on before we started recording it does everything the Leaf does, either to the same standard or a little bit better. And I think that's what I really like about it. The charging maybe is the one part that I'm slightly iffy about, because if I were to buy another electric car, I'd want faster home charging, which is a big bugbear of yours for this.
Yeah, and that should be fair enough. And we've got the spec sheets printed out here. In the US, you can get this with a 7.2 kilowatt onboard charger.
You can.
In Europe, it's only 3 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Now, Volkswagen's told me that there is a 7 kilowatt version coming. So I guess it's that point, Mark.
Or the scores.
Or we have to give it scores.
Now, I'll let you go first, because you've got.
Now I'm thinking of 7.5 in Europe.
Okay.
Now, this is based on the fact that I think when we first started doing this, we were throwing about 8s and 9s like they were candy.
Well, yes.
And I think actually I'd like to redact some of those 7 and 8s. And this is on we're doing a new score. This is a 7.5, where 5 is, and 1 is terrible, and 10 is, oh my God, it's so fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, 7.5 is heading up that way. And I think it's a 7.5 because it's an ordinary car. It's the first, I think it is the first and the only plug-in car that we've driven that is available in pretty much any form of fuel you want to throw it in. You can have a diesel, you can have a petrol, you can have a performance, you can have an eco one, you can have a plug-in hybrid, and you can have an all-electric.
Yeah.
And for that, I think Volkswagen deserves massive, massive kudos.
And doesn't seem to have compromised any version of it.
And there's no compromise. Now, why is it only a 7.5? 2 reasons. Firstly, because I don't think Volkswagen is as interested in selling this as it could be.
Oh, okay.
If it was more interested in selling this as a company, if it was pushing it through its dealers like Nissan was, and it was involved in building up these charging networks like Nissan has been, then it would be an 8.5.
Yeah.
Okay. In Europe, it's a 7.5 also because of that 3 kilowatt onboard charger.
That's such a bizarre decision as well.
Pants. That's absolutely pants. DC quick charging, great, but our CCS infrastructure is not where it could be. And in the States, I'm going to give it an 8.5 because of the 7.2 kilowatt quick charging.
Yeah.
Very, very normal feel. You get extra stuff in the States like the rear view camera. You get a little more in the way of gadgetry, because in the States cars do tend to have better trim levels and specification to the to the Europe.
And they get them cheaper as well.
And cheaper, all right. And yours?
Mine. So just to counter your point, I think when we review cars, we review them in the space that they're in. Mm-hmm. So when we reviewed the Zoe, for instance, this car didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, this is superior to the Zoe in every way.
Yeah, yes, other than the 3-phase.
Apart from the price.
Price. But so I think our earlier reviews got higher scores because there were fewer things to compare them against.
Right, that's fair enough, that's a fair comment.
But it might be worth revisiting those reviews.
Yes.
In a modern world. For this, I still want to give it an 8.
Okay.
Mainly,
even with the 3-phase?
Yeah, even without the 3-phase, even though it's got the right connector for it, even with the only 3 kilowatts, and even with my little niggles, I want to give it 8. But there are a few things that I would like to change, a few things I'd like to improve, but it is the first electric car, other than the Tesla, but that's fantasy for me. I've come out of it and I've seriously sat down and gone, how much is it? Mm-hmm. I'm interested in this personally. And I could see myself owning one.
Yeah, okay.
That's why. It's a very personal score.
We are 16.5, effectively, if we take
which
my
I
top
think
score.
is where all of our reviews end up.
But, I think if I could sum this up, if the Nissan Leaf looks too geeky for you,
Yeah.
This is your obvious choice. Okay, my name's Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield.
I'm Mark Chatterley.
And this has been the Charged Up for what, Mark?
The Volkswagen e-Golf.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The driver's seat
Ah, you can go up and down.
and the passenger seat. Oh.
Are broken now. I'm going to use adaptive cruise control.
Okay, let's talk about that.
I can't for some reason. What have I done?